So I think by now or so many videos that I've done at this particular time, it's becoming pretty clear what a slog it is to work through a lot of this material, and how painstaking a lot of how painstakingly we have to, or what painstaking steps we have to take in order to come to a judgment. And so today's judgment is going to be about, well, what is so special about a billionaire's chart? What makes a billionaire? And I thought we would look at it through we could look at it through the lens of both of kingdom, right, which we had looked at before, and we could look at it through the but I thought we would instead look at it through the lens of substance. All right, our billionaires are going to be Richard Branson, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, and Oprah Winfrey. And this message from Combo thing, that was a horror area I did after I think Combo is a compound that comes from the frog, and it's like basically like a plant medicine. Anyway, so I was asking about that. Right. So what I decided to do was what I thought I would do. Okay, sorry about that, you all. I all of a sudden realized I didn't have any of the materials that I needed to actually commence with the video. Okay, so what we I thought I would do is actually, let's change the share here, is that I would come to this idea of substance, that we would look at it through the lens of substance, right? Because that's what most of these people, a billionaire is known for being a billionaire, not necessarily how they got. I mean, it's billionaire first, then it's how they got their billions, right? And so, but it's the classification. They're not known as financier. They're not known as doctor. I mean, there are doctors that are billionaires, there, but not many, I'm sure. But you know what I'm saying? Or, president, like our present president is a billionaire. Certainly at this point he is, right? So, but he's really the president, but he's now a billionaire. So it's like on some of these ideas we think, okay, it's billionaire. It's really about how much money they have. It's about the amount of substance. And so I thought what I would do is I would start with looking at it through the area of substance. But as I was doing that, I saw that there were a few other things to look at. Because really it's about what makes a chart special. So one of the things that I thought about, or one of the things that I did a video about, and of course the only person that was ever with me in those videos was Layla, but it was when I did the 146 considerations. And for those of you who are serious, there's a bunch of you who are following these videos and that are really quite serious. And I definitely say go to my 146 considerations videos. There I go into each of them, and we use charts from my astrology study to see if we can find what is being talked about, etc. But it's a great way to kind of get into the really kind of the nuts and bolts of how the medievals believed that the chart worked. Okay, and one of the things that I learned was about this thing called the hidden helper. And the hidden helper is essentially a fixed star. And so I thought, well, maybe, what does make these billionaires so different than everybody else? Like how can we tell? How can we tell that a chart is a billionaire's chart and not just some millionaire, or not some broke ass motherfucker like me, right? So I thought, well, let's look at some of these stars and see if they show up anywhere. And so just to kind of briefly go over the fixed stars, obviously the fixed stars are as they sound. They are stars. They're not planets or anything else. They are stars like, Aldebaran and Antares, right? Those are names that are pretty familiar. Of course, and so as you can see here, there are stars that are traditionally considered royal, and then there are stars that are especially bright, and so the stars that are especially bright are called stars of the first magnitude. So we're going to be looking primarily for stars of the first magnitude, stars that are either of the first magnitude and or are royal. Okay, and so those are well, Algol is a pretty major one too. So maybe we would, so maybe pretty much any of these on this list is what we would go through. But there's a few that especially the what they call first magnitude, and then the royal stars. Okay, and some of these, I think it's the white ones that are royal stars. They're the ones that John Frawley basically just classified as royal. So the traditional ones are Aldebaran and Antares, which are pretty much opposite from each other, Regulus and Fomalhaut. Okay, and Fomalhaut shows up a lot more than I expected. Note that it's royal, but not first magnitude. And same thing with Regulus, which we know is extremely powerful fixed star. So it's also royal, but not first magnitude. Okay, so we'll see if some of those show up. But some of the ones we're going to be looking at, definitely, like I said, Regulus, Antares, and Aldebaran. We'll see if we can find those. What was the other one? There's this one, Prochiron, at 25 degrees of Cancer, Fomalhaut, which is at in the fourth degree of Pisces. So we'll be looking to see if maybe any of these kind of show up. Okay, so well, first of all, let's go ahead and do that. Let's look and see if we can do that. That sounds like a fun thing to start with. So the thing to start with then is now this is the one chart that well, no, let's start with Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah, she's got this Sag rising. This is my chart basically. It's at late degrees of Sag rising with Jupiter and Gemini retrograde. Jupiter and Gemini retrograde. That's my chart. Um, but this is her chart. So let's see what she's doing. What's going on? If we see any of those things. I think I did not. Oh, remember also there's Spica, which is like 23 degrees of Libra, and so not really, huh? And then what? So anything else? Oh yes, Fomalhaut, part of fortune on Fomalhaut. And we're going to come back to the part of fortune because the part of fortune is kind of the star of the show today. But so part of fortune on Fomalhaut. So that's a already we've got one that's kind of showing that. Let's see. Donald Trump, Regulus on the ascendant. And so this thing with these fixed stars on the ascendant, this may be why he's been so untouchable. So fixed stars on the ascendant. This is a very, and then we've got this Venus on Prochiron. And so it looks like this 12th house, the 12th house is Prochiron. So I think that's kind of interesting. The Venus on Prochiron, the Saturn Venus, and note that the Saturn is ruler of the part of fortune here. The part of fortune is not, if I can remember, I don't think it is late degrees of Aquarius. Yeah, only the second degree of Aquarius is considered is on that list. Note that the spirit is close to this Fomalhaut again. So it's interesting to kind of look at. I remember the first time that I became aware of Fomalhaut. It was when it was in Luciano Pavarotti's chart, and I think it was the part of fortune too. But so that means this Mars and this ascendant. I tend to give as much as 3 degrees for planets. Really, probably one is the max that should be given. But considering that the ascendant itself is right on it, and the Mars is so close, there's not really a way that they can. There and also that same thing is that Regulus is, I think it's Saturn and Mars. That's its nature, Saturn and Mars. So Mars is actually of the nature of, one of the co-planets that kind of represent the nature of the star. So, all right. So we see with Donald Trump, there's fixed star activity going on. Then with Bill Gates. 2657, close to Prochiron, fixed star activity on the ascendant, right? Then we've got okay, the previous new moon. Is this a new moon or yeah, it's a new moon chart. Previous new moon chart. The previous new moon is very close to Spica. Anything going on? Otherwise, it does. Oh wait, look at how close the Jupiter is to Regulus. Okay, so and any of those involved with the part of fortune, well, the Jupiter is opposing the part of fortune. Okay, so like I said, the part of fortune is the winner of this, or not the winner, but the he's the star of the show today. or as we will see. Now, this is really an extension of what we've done before. I've done videos on this before, but I haven't looked at charts of billionaires. I've just looked at how to do this stuff, how to do this stuff before. But I'm really interested in what makes a billionaire's chart different from somebody else's. How are we going to tell? What would be something that we would know? Is there a combination with houses? Like, is the ruler of the fifth with is it like, Vedic, where is the ruler of the fifth and the second and the 11th, or the ruler of the 11th and the fifth and the second to get together? So any of that kind of, well, certainly 11 and second. So is there any connection between the 11 and second? Well, let's look at this chart. Venus and the sun. No. Oh yes, they're together in the sign, but that's not always necessarily good, right? Because that can be a combustion. All right, so we've looked at her and or Bill Gates rather, and we do see that there's that Prochiron again. And what do we see? And then we see Regulus here with Jupiter, who, remember, is the significator for substance. Did we look at Oprah? I think we just did. Richard Branson. I think Richard Branson's not going to have. We looked at Oprah. Uh, so, nope. I mean, that's on the other side of it, so not really. On the other side of Regulus, so not really. The moon is on the other side of Regulus, so not really. Oh, there's Prochiron, 25 Cancer. 25 can Prochiron keeps showing up. Prochiron keeps showing up. Oh, and Fomalhaut, 3 degrees, so it's within 3 degrees. I'm giving it 3 degrees. Like I say, it should be probably one. Now, note that in the 146 considerations, the widest orb that they gave a conjunction, and it had to be a conjunction, no squares and trines and all that kind of bullshit. Conjunction to the fixed star, it needed to be within 50 minutes. So the strongest hidden helper was a fixed star that was that no later than 16 minutes. Of course, the strongest was it was exact to the minute. The next strongest was it was within 16 minutes. And then the next strongest was it was within 50 minutes. But 50 minutes was really the outside thing. So I'm giving it way more than it probably is, but we can see that maybe these things are kind of, I mean, certainly in this case, Richard Branson, the sun's right on it, and the sun's the ruler of the ascendant here. Right, so that's even, and it's on the part of spirit, right? So ruler of the ascendant on the part of spirit, and ruler of the ascendant on the prochiron, which is kind of juicy. Right, so that's the only thing in this chart, if I'm not mistaken, that was there. Oh, the Jupiter kind of close to the Fomalhaut. So two of these stars that I'd never really known very much about, Fomalhaut and Prochiron, they seem to be showing up in these people's charts. Now, I have a friend who has 26 degrees of Cancer rising in his chart, and he's no billionaire, but he is a very bright light and a lot to deal with, and really, and really a lot to handle. A handful, as his father even has called him. He's like, yeah, he's always been a handful, as what he said. So that could be the extra, energy of the fixed star that is kind of pumping it, pumping it up. So let's move now to, where is it? There. Let's move now to Bonatti and what he has to say about substance. Now, as you know, I prefer to kind of use. Oh, we're there. Okay, I prefer to kind of use the. I'm sorry. I prefer to use my own little notations of it, but I wanted to start with this because I want to kind of go through where Bonatti starts from. He starts with Ptolemy. So he basically starts with Ptolemy, and Ptolemy says when you're looking for substance, you're going to look when you're looking for the kind of and how and whence substance will come to the native from the part of fortune alone, right? So the part of fortune, that's all. Nothing to do with the second house, nothing to do with anything like that. From the part of fortune. So that was the kind of substance, how they were going to get it, and when, from where. Whence is from where. The knowledge of arrival of his substance is that of his substance is that you look at the part of fortune and the planetary al-mubtaz over the degree in which it is. We've been doing a lot of that, right? We've been looking a lot at this, working a lot with the essential dignities chart and at its strength and weakness. That is the Almubtas over the part of fortune, and at the planets which are conjoined with the Almubtas in the hour of the nativity, or those which are elevated above it according to the aforesaid way. So that's something we're going to take into account. All right, that's something where that especially then. So we're going to keep that, especially planets which are elevated above it, which basically means 10 houses away. Planets that are conjoined. We're going to come back to that in a bit. So then he goes on to say, okay, if this planet is the significator, if this planet is the significator, blah blah blah. But then he says, okay, but Omar says this, and this is where we come to probably our the list that we are the most familiar with. He says, look at the cusp of the second from the ascendant and the of the nativity and the planets that are in it, and the Lord of the second, the part of substance. Okay, so that's new now, and its Lord Jupiter, which I just said is the Lord, the significator of substance, the natural significator of substance, and the part of fortune and its Lord, right? So those seven things, right? So those potentially those seven things, there doesn't have to be anything in the second house. Then you look at the Mubtaz over all seven of those things. Right, so that's the new thing that I learned here is that often they'll give you a list of things to look at, and then they'll tell you to look at the mutant over the thing that you are looking at. So not just the Jupiter, but Jupiter's ruler, not just the ruler of the second house, but the ruler of the second house's ruler is basically what it's saying. Right. So, or Al Mubtaz or the winner. And, we talk a lot about who wins versus who is the domicile ruler and all of that stuff with the mutants. So, that list. And then, Abu Ali says, but hey, if you really want to know on a more general way, then you're going to look at the triplicity lords of the light in charge. Right. So those are the three introductions to this material that he kind of prefaces what he actually does with. Okay. So it's those three things, those three possibilities. We're not really going to go into very much, especially the last one. We can if we have time, if I'm not too distracted, or if I get too distracted. But this is his actual recommendation. And so what he says is if you're going to wreck the figure and you're going to look first at the part of fortune because it's preferred to the part of substance. So this is his thesis. The part of fortune signifies the native substance, prosperity, and status, and his whole condition. Indeed, the part of substance is attributed to riches alone. So let's remember, I use the part of fortune as an ascendant. So his whole condition, right? That involves his whole condition, not just his substance, prosperity, and status, and his entire condition. The substance is just about his money, just about what they've acquired. Oh, and then I'm going to teach it this very simple technique also that we're going to add in once we kind of get into this. So what he basically says is go to the essential dignities chart and see, he's not saying find the mutant. He says note who the domicile, exaltation, bound, triplicity, and include face you were discovered to have fallen, and consider which of the four sets is stronger, right? So then he find the Amlub test. That's fine. And then he says, okay, if you find that the Amluptas is connected to the Lord of the Ascendant, right? She said, and all of the stuff that we know. You want the Amluptas to be in the Amluptas to be in the angles. You want it to be in his own dom. Right? That's going to be the best thing. Is if the ruler of the part of fortune is in an angle in its own sign or exaltation and well aspected, free from impediment. Okay, makes perfect sense, right? But then he says, if the Lord of the Ascendant, now he's talking about the ruler of the Ascendant, and it goes, if the Lord of the Ascendant or one of the benefics were to aspect it, that the one aspecting were free from impediments, and they themselves were free from impediment, right? Namely, made fortunate and strong, his substance will be increased by half of the total. So already it's saying, okay, so based on who's connected to the ruler of the part of fortune, whoever we decide is the Almubtas, whoever is the winner, because sometimes the winner of points can't really do it because they're in fucked up condition, right? So whoever we decide, so what's going on with them? If they're and so then he talks about how it gets increased based on Lord of the Exaltation, if it's connected, if the bun and he just says aspected. So he's not talking about necessarily a an applying aspect. He's talking about a whole sign aspect. So if they're receiving a whole sign aspect to the, so let's just break it down and just do that for right now, for just this second. Let's just find the omliptaz of one of these for one of these charts of the part of fortune, right? So the part of fortune in this chart, who is this Richard Branson? It's at 21 degrees of Virgo. Now we know with Virgo that more than likely, not more than likely, but generally Mercury is the rule is the main ruler because he rules both the domicile and the exaltation. 21 Virgo, and it's daytime because the sun was above the horizon. So it's Mercury, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury. So Mercury gets not just 9 points for exaltation and domicile, gets 10 points for exaltation, domicile, and face. So really, that is the winner, right? And then Venus also, and then Jupiter also have points in it. So we could say that because of Mercury's place, right? Mercury's in the 12th house and relatively peregrine, that maybe the best thing for the best one would be to use Jupiter, right? Maybe Jupiter should be the winner, even though he's retrograde, or to use Venus. She's peregrine, you know. But the winner is. Let's just stick with who the winner is. The winner is Mercury. So now we want to see now is the ruler of the ascendant aspecting? Nope. Is Venus is aspecting, but not Jupiter. So did you see what I'm? So see, it doesn't have to be that way. It could have been that Venus and Jupiter are both aspecting. Or well, you see what you see, and so and Jupiter is the term ruler. Venus is the triplicity ruler. The Mercury obviously is the domicile and exaltation. So that's what he's saying there is that the first thing you do is you look and you see who the mutant is, and then you see who's aspecting them. Look how also this Mars is aspecting, so that maybe that might take something away, right? So if the malefics are thankfully the Saturn is, but think if the Saturn were here in Aquarius, right? Then that would maybe take away from it from it. So something I these are things I haven't worked with before, but once again, kind of into the tedium of how we should be looking at or how we should be working with what we're reading. And then it becomes so then he moves from that and then he basically says if the Lord of the domicile did not now he's not talking about he's no longer talking about in my opinion and if there's anybody who's been reading this and thinks and knows better or thinks different I'd love to hear you from you but in my opinion, he has stopped talking about the ruler of the Amobtas, and now he's talking about the ruler of the actual part of fortune. If the Lord of the domicile did not aspect or were impeded, then look at the Lord of the exaltation, and which if he were impeded, look at the Lord of the bound. You see, so we're no longer talking about the ruler of the Almubtas of the part of fortune. We're talking about the part of fortune itself, in my opinion. Indeed, if the Lord of the bound were impeded, look at the Lord of the triplicity. Which if you were to see him impeded, look lastly at Lord of the face, and speak of whichever one of them and about which is signified by him, just as I have told you. Indeed, if the part of fortune and all the aforesaid significators were impeded, you will firmly announce it is going to be contrary of those things which we had found, and according to the same method in a bad way, you will predict according to what's judged above in a good one. All right. So, which means that then he says then that means that okay you can't use the part of fortune as or any of its planets as the significators for your so the part of fortune and its profile is eliminated as the ability to be substance the significator for substance right so let's say in this particular chart we just looked at, Jupiter was retrograde, but it was in its own sign. So it's the strongest of everybody. And so basically, it could represent the entire profile as the part of fortune. So the part of fortune through Jupiter could be the significator of substance, right? And so then he would go on and he would say, so he says the same thing. If that can't happen, then you've got to go next to look at the part of substance, and you will see in whose domicile or one of the aforesaid dignities that were to fall. And you do the same thing with it. All right. So that's what we're going to kind of look at, and then I'm going to also introduce us to this technique. Okay. So I'm not going to bring up the essential dignity chart. I'm just going to yell out the planets that are make up the right. At this point, if you've been the 80 to 100 people or 30 to 100 people that have been following this, you know how to, you have your charts out and you're on top of it. I'm sure I don't have to tell you anything. This is Richard Branson. All right. So the planets that if you just to refresh our memory, were Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. Yeah, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. Those were the three planets that would represent the part of Fortune's profile as the significator for substance. Jupiter, in my opinion, is the only one that could be thought of. Let me just be sure Venus is not a possibility. No, she's in the term of Mars and the face of the sun. She didn't have any kind of dignity at all where she is. Okay, nor, I mean, there's a whole sign, right? We had already just established that there's a whole sign connection with Mercury, but and that would give way back or once Mercury gets to her, that will actually be a nice reception for her. But for now, not yet. Not really. So it looks like really, if we wanted to use somebody, Jupiter seems to make the most sense. Okay, so that seems to make the most sense. So, is there anything interesting about the Jupiter? We had just said that the Jupiter is on Fomalhaut, right? Is on the this other thing, or is there any other thing in this chart? Oh yeah, the Prochiron with the Sun. That was the only other thing that we kind of had that was going on with that. What's interesting about Richard Branson is that he made his money with Virgin Airlines, Virgin Healthcare, Virgin Music, Virgin Studios, Virgin. He said he used also very his mother. So actually, this was one of the reasons I thought that Jupiter was. It seemed to be pointed. It would pointed to his mother being important, and indeed, it turns out that he consistently brings up how his mother helped him to succeed and was like one of the more inspirational forces in his life. So to just finding the significator, we see that there's this interesting thing with the Jupiter. Right? This now, what I think is interesting that we've got a billionaire's chart with Saturn on the part of fortune. Saturn rules the sixth and the seventh, so of course the sixth house is like healthcare. The moon is rules the 12th, which is hospitals. So I thought, oh, maybe healthcare and hospitals. There's a Virgin Healthcare. Then maybe the wife is involved with it. And I think that he was married to an older spouse who maybe married into a family that helped him or something, an older spouse that was married or something like that. So do you see what I'm saying? How these things can kind of show up, work out? Because what did Ptolemy say? How whence whence and the nature of it. So the virgin is bringing him his money, so we definitely know that the significator in this particular case, it's a telltale sign. The significator for substance for this person is the part of fortune, but it's working through the Jupiter. And it's interesting because I know him for Virgin Airlines. These are signs with wings. So Virgo has wings. Pisces has wings. Now, Leo does not have wings, but of course, Mercury has the winged shoes. Leo doesn't have wings. So I'm really am inclined to think that the Jupiter in Pisces is the actual significator, is the significator for substance in this chart. All right, so we see that. Oh, and we saw one already that we have the fixed stars going on. And what was the Yeah, you're right. So, and this was the chart. It's interesting. This was the chart. I tried to do a video of this before, and it didn't quite work for me. This was the chart that didn't quite work for me. But now, looking at it differently, I'm seeing things a little differently. It's way more useful. Okay, now this chart's interesting too, Bill Gates. So the 24th degree of Aquarius, and and so first of all, who's obviously our mutant is Saturn. Saturn, and it's nighttime, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's nighttime, so Mercury's the triplicity of air. So it's Saturn, Mercury, Mars, Moon. Saturn, Mercury, Mars, Moon. Oh, that's right, right. Okay, so here's one where this actually, so the mutant is Saturn, right? Note that Saturn is with one benefic. What was the question? What was it that he said? The Benatti said if he's with either the ruler, the ascendant, or one of the benefics, that it will increase it at least by half, right? So not only is there this aspect, or there's this actual conjungia joining, because it's a, it's a conjunction, an applying conjunction, but we've got, remember what did Benatti say when he was referring to Ptolemy? Anything elevated above, right? So we have an aspect from Jupiter, we have an aspect from Venus, and Jupiter is elevated above, and this Jupiter is on the this Jupiter is on the actual on that Regulus, right? So the king making, he's on that king making star, right? Regulus, regum, king, regnum. So it's a kingdom, kingmaker. Right. It's called the Heart of the Lion right now. And now it's in Virgo. It's at the 0 degrees of Virgo. Anyway, so you see that's supporting what he's talking about, the connection to the Almuten over the part of fortune receiving these aspects. The ruler of the ascendant, no. Right, but definitely this other way. But then, which one would be the actual planet that is the represents? And I said, what was it? Saturn, Mercury, Mars, Moon, right? And so those were the ones that I said. I don't really love any of them, but based on what's going on with, and also note the fact that Venus is in detriment, right, applying to the Saturn. Even though it is with a benefic, and also note that Jupiter is in Saturn's detriment. Now, these aren't things that's making it happen less, right? So maybe it's making the person behave worse in order to get it, right? Because they're not necessarily diminishing what how much money he got. It seems that it's might be making the circumstances by which it comes about different, or less palatable. There's an unpalatable as if we're looking at it from this way. There's something, right? Venus's detriment going to the major benefic, Jupiter in the major, sorry, malefic. Jupiter, the major benefic, in this right square. Thankfully, it's separating, but it's also from Saturn's detriment too. So it's. I think it would make it make choices that are unethical, or possibly, or something like that, because we know that it didn't subtract the amount of money. All right. So, but do we like Saturn for the ruler, for the actual substance, right? He's not the strongest, even though he's got these two influences. Mercury is stronger, but we don't like the fact that he's so close to Mars, right? And then the moon is opposing Mars, right? So, but we can see how everything is so tightly wound up. Now, he made his money, he's an information person. So there, of course, is the Aquarius. So yes, so once again, we can see it. We can see it. It's not the substance that made him the money. Let's look at, oh, that's right. We haven't looked to see who the ruler of substance is. Let's go ahead and do it in this chart. We didn't do it in Branson, but in Branson's chart, it's both. I'll spoiler. In Branson's chart, it's both, and I think in Branson's chart, it's directly on the Saturn. Okay, so let's find the part of substance in this chart. It's found by looking by taking the ruler of the second to the cusp of the second. In this case, that would be Sun to the cusp of the second. So that's back 90 degrees and forward 13, right? Because 5 degrees of Scorpio, back 90 is 5 degrees of Leo, and forward 13 to 18, or so, or 6 and 19, right? All right, so we're going to do the same thing. Back 90 degrees to 27 degrees of Aries. Forward 10 is 7 degrees of Taurus. Forward 3 is the 10th degree of Taurus. Right, the 10th degree of Taurus. Now that now gives us an interesting thing because that now means that the Venus is with the Saturn. That means that the ruler of the substance is with the ruler of the fortune. And okay, here's another thing. And that's the other reason that I wondered if his mother was involved, because both significators for no, it's Bill Gates. It wasn't, it was Branson. So I think that's something different. Sorry about that. That's a brain fart there. But that puts them both together. So now I'll teach this other thing. There's this thing called the acquisition. It comes from Vedic balance, and the acquisition is an acquisitive place that from which you make all this money, from which whatever you're going to get is kind of shown. And you find it by looking for the 11th house from the part of fortune, which in this case would be Jupiter, Sagittarius, right? Right? It would be Sagittarius. That's the 11th house from the part of fortune. And the Jupiter that's on the Regulus, the Jupiter Pluto, rather, that's on the Regulus, even the Pluto, kind of even makes it more extreme, huh? The Jupiter Pluto on the Regulus is the ruler of the acquisition, and that's culminating. That's 10 houses away from this Saturn, right? And giving it, so that's culminating from it, and also aspecting. So we've got not only now the substances with the fortune, we've got the ruler of the acquisition is 10 houses culminating or elevated from the part of fortune and the substance, and giving them that aspect, that whole sign aspect. And after Venus is finished with Saturn, she will go and square him. And so then the Mercury and the Mars are together. And of course, it's all information. So Mercury, and now note how the Mercury Mars come back to the Venus, and the Jupiter goes to the Jupiter goes to the Sun in Scorpio, who goes back to the Mars, who goes back to the Venus. So really, it is probably the Saturn. The Saturn is probably the significator. I was thinking maybe Mercury because it's computers, but I don't like the fact that he's with Mars. But it could once again note how the Mars is detrimented. It could once again talk about how the person got the money, not so much because you all know what I think about Mercury Mars, right? So that's interesting, isn't it? Right. And we have the Prochiron. We already talked about that fixed star. Now it turns out that the ruler of the 11th house from the part of fortune is on a fixed star as well. Right. Then we've got the Venus. And then we have what he was already talking about. Right. So I think we can go ahead and decide that Saturn, before I was thinking maybe I didn't want to. And let's just look and see what did we say? It was 10 degrees of Taurus. It's Venus, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Moon, and Mercury. Mercury has the term in face, 10 degrees. Yeah, Venus, Moon, and Mercury. So it's not that, so now it's the other side of the coin, Moon and Mercury, right? And not including the Mars. The Venus is included, the Moon's still included, the Mercury is still included. So those are commonalities, right? The moon and the Mercury are commonalities with this, right? It's basically it's moon applying to Mars and then be to Mercury, right? So it's coming on, the Mercury is involved in it, whatever is going on. Okay, so that was interesting, Bill Gates. And then now our fucking mad dictator. So we already talked about the Regulus on the cusp of the ascendant, right? and that's huge. And the Mars so close, and the fact that Mars is that Regulus is of the nature, I think, of Saturn and Mars. I'm almost positive that that's true. And maybe I'll do a little addendum video where we talk about these and look at how the Venus is on the 25th degree of right on the Prochiron, right? So Prochiron has really shown up in all of these charts. I don't know that we can. It'd be interesting to we don't have charts of enough billionaires, but if you have more billionaires charts, be looking for the 26th degree, especially if they were born, after the Second World War. Look for the 26th degree of Cancer. Look for the 30th degree of Leo. Right now, if you're looking at charts from now, well, Regulus has moved into Virgo. And okay, anyway, so this is going to be really similar to the last one, right? Because it's the exact same uh, sign for the part of fortune. It's daytime, however. So it's Saturn, Moon. Saturn has the triplicity, the term, the domicile, and the Moon has everything else. And then the Moon. So Saturn has everything, and Moon has space. So obviously, so let's look to see. Oh, look, he's with one of the. Oh, and this is an interesting thing. This is a very interesting thing. Okay, so yes, look, there's the rule of the almutin of the part of fortune, even though it's detrimented. And see, in my opinion, this is one of the things that those of us who've been around for a while in Trump's orbit, so to speak, is that Trump was pushed as this billionaire, but it turned out that he really didn't have the money, and so when he lost everything. It turned out that a lot of things that he was being touted for, he was getting publicity for, weren't really right, weren't really kind of right about it. So it was kind of a false ground, that there was a falseness to his actual wealth, even though he was certainly wealthy, but he wasn't as wealthy as expected. And then, he lost practically everything. So uh, I thought that was really interesting. So we got this Saturn now in Cancer, but also with Venus, similar to Bill Gates, and then also, but now instead of having the Jupiter elevated, which would have put the Jupiter in Aries, the Jupiter is here in Libra. But it does some very interesting thing. It creates two very fascinating receptions. So already you've got Jupiter in Libra and Saturn in Cancer. Cancer is the exaltation of Jupiter. Libra is the exaltation of Saturn. Okay, so you've got these planets in mutual reception by exaltation, right? And then you've got this mixed reception with Venus, where Jupiter is in her domicile, she's in his exaltation. So super strong either way. But it gets even more interesting. In the 24th degree at nighttime, or it's daytime even, in the 24th degree of Cancer, Jupiter is the actual Almutin. He's the winner because he's the actual term ruler, if I'm not mistaken. 24 degrees, 20, yes, he's got between 19 and 26. He's the term ruler and the face ruler, if I'm not mistaken. So he ends up actually being the winner. Oh, no, no. The moon's the face ruler. So they actually end up tying, if I'm not mistaken. So he is the Almutin of this degree. And then in the 18th degree of Libra, Saturn is the Almutin of this degree. So they basically are Almutins that are mutually receptive. There are Almutins in mutual reception too. So this system is so fucking powerful. This money system, even though it's built on sand, right? Even though its main significator by Almutin is built on sand. It's very well fortified by its receptions. Is it strong enough? Is it well fortified enough to be the significator? Now, Aquarius, that's not something for which he's really that well known, right? Or Aquarius, that's the seventh house. Obviously, he's known for having, attractive wives or whatever. But that's not like when we think about how he's made his money. Like there should be, like we saw the stamp, right? We saw the stamp with Richard Branson to let us know that, oh yeah, that is actually the significator. We just need to find the right planet right? Then with whoever we just looked at last, right? Oh, was Bill Gates, right? Information, electricity, information, computers, the wave of the future, right? But that's not what we know Trump for. So let's look and see. So even though I love this, I don't have enough. Even it does take care of what they're talking about, where if the Almutin, which is Saturn, definitely, if the Almutin is involved with these benefics or whatever, then yes, that's a great thing, and that's there. But is it the significator for substance? I'm postulating no, and this is why. So let's look at the part of substance. So saying I'm Bonatti and I think I know as much as Bonatti, and I say, okay, no, I don't like the part of fortune. Yes, yes, there's that mutual reception, and that is very, very helpful. But note also that Saturn and Venus are both in the 12th house, right? He's within 3 degrees. She's right on the fucking cusp. So even that about it, so, it's a detriment. It's on in the 12th house. It's got a lot of benefic influence, right? But it's not, I don't want to use it personally. So let's go to the next level down and look at the ruler, find the part of substance. And so that's taking Mercury to the second house. And so that's 60 degrees plus 20, right? Because Mercury is at 8 Cancer and this is at 28 Virgo. So 60 degrees is 30 degrees of Libra, plus 20 is 20 degrees of Scorpio. Note how close it is to the cusp of the fourth house. What did he make his money in? Real estate. What's he now being known for? Fourth house is the house of secrets. He's being known for sexual misconduct. For secret sexual misconduct. Scorpio rules the genitals. So let's look and see who the planets are that, well, I think in this, no, well, I don't know. Okay, wait. So let's just look. It's daytime. Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Jupiter. Mars, Venus, Jupiter. Now, Mars just happens to have 3 points in this sign. Even though it's not a sign that he rules, he has the term and the face. So it was Mars. What was it? Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. Those were the three. Venus and Jupiter we've already talked about, and I decided I don't really like them, even though she's technically in her triplicity, so she's got 3 points. But she's also with a malefic, right? Even though she's getting the benefic influence, she's with a malefic, so I don't really love her. But I do like him. Look at how close he is to the ascendant. Look at how close he is to Regulus. Look at what it means. The fourth house. The fourth house is real estate. It's anything above and below the ground, buildings and homes and things of that nature. Bam. And also think about what he was doing. He was leasing his name. He was leasing his identity. When he could no longer kind of get into the kind of development and building game, he had been making his money off leasing his name and putting his name on properties. Bam. So I think that the Mars is functioning as the actual part of substance here, right? But isn't that fascinating what's going on with that? Let's do one last one with Oprah Winfrey because she does have some fascinating things going on, especially because in her particular case, we cannot use the winner of the part of fortune. Oh, actually, I think, hold on a second. It's not, is it nighttime? It is nighttime. All right. So let's look and see. The part of fortune is the fifth degree of Pisces, which is Venus's term. So it's Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Saturn, right? And Jupiter has 5 and Venus has 7, has 6. So Venus is the winner. Venus is the winner. So even though Jupiter is the ruler, the domicile ruler, Venus is the winner. And that is really important in my opinion because Venus is Casimir. Venus is Casimir. And so, okay, so let's just use her as the winner, right? So Venus is Casimir. So she's not, we, that certainly is a benefic experience for her. There is a, after that, the next thing she would be doing would be applying to the Jupiter, but this Jupiter is not very useful, right? This Jupiter is, can, one of the impediments is to be in an aspect to a planet that is not what the planet that is not in its domicile and that is retrograde. So it's not really good to be is to be connected with the planet that's retrograde. We already know why, because of that return of virtue, and then also a planet that's detrimented. It's not very powerful. So then you're kind of, you know, you're not with the cool kids or some bullshit like that, but you're basically you're hitching your wagon with something that's going nowhere. Ultimately, is how that's looked. So, but we do have the Casimir that's helping. But we do also have this Saturn Mars that's culminating, right? So that's culminating from it. So even though this is the winner, maybe I might not want to use that as the, you know, because the next application from the Sun is to the Saturn. This is the stuff that's elevated, right? It's talking about what's elevated, right? So maybe even though that is definitely the winner, we may or may not want to use it as the actual, shall we say, significator. Maybe this Mars makes more sense, right? And even the fact that he's with Saturn, even though he's very far away from it, but the Saturn's in, you know, in his sign, so Mars is calling the shots. Nothing really untoward. I mean, the Pluto is, you know, but nothing untoward is culminating. That's an interesting thing because when I tried to do this the last time, I thought, you know, I really was thinking, I'm not really sure, but I think even though it is with reception, right? So the Venus is going to you know, the Saturn receives the Venus, but the Venus doesn't receive the Saturn. Right. The Mars doesn't have any problem. He's in the 11th of hopes and wishes, future hopes and wishes. Right. These are all the planets that are making up the part of fortune. We know that one of her main audiences is women. She is a cult figure for women. And so that's right there. Right. So maybe the Casimir is strong enough that it can operate as the significator, but it's one of these two. I'm more inclined to go with the Mars because it's just more straightforward, but because of the Casimir and because women are such a major part of it, and once again, it's an information related sign. How isn't it fascinating how much Aquarius has been showing up in these charts? And I'm not doing it on purpose. I just, you know, picking people, right? So oh, well, then let's look at the 11th house thing. So the 11th from Pisces is Capricorn. And there's that Saturn. And look at, oh, okay, well, then maybe it does make sense. Now we've got the ruler of the exaltation, or not the exaltation, the ruler of the acquisition is culminating or, you know, is elevated from the ruler of the part of fortune. From the mutant of the part of fortune. Remember, this is the ruler. Let's look and see who the substance is, just for shits and giggles. It's Saturn. Oh, okay. So forward 90. Oh, Saturn's the ruler of the second. Yeah, also, so that has the ruler of the second culminating from the mutant of the part of fortune. Okay, just we're just going to use that as the mutant of the part of fortune. So this is the mutant. This so that makes a lot more sense when we think that the actual winner really is Venus, and that makes a lot more sense. Sometimes it doesn't, but you know, sometimes I've found often it really makes sense to just use the domicile ruler. But in this particular case, we really can see it. Now, as a significator for a person, I would say go ahead and just use the domicile ruler. But for something like this, we can see that the financial thing ain't weak, right? Financial thing ain't weak and in remission or subject to constant reversals, right? We know that that's not the case. So I think that we can rest assured that that this is probably it's something. Oh, it's a worse substance. Okay, so it's 90 minus 2, minus 7. 90 is minus 7. Forward 90 minus 7. So the 30th degree of Pisces minus, so 23 degrees, 23rd degree of Pisces. Jupiter, Venus, Mars. That's right, Mars. I forgot Mars is the winner. I forgot. I forgot in those late degrees of Pisces, Mars is the mutant of Pisces at nighttime. At nighttime. Mars. I think Mars. Obviously, they're both working, but we can see how they both are. This Mars is so strong that if we are just talking about money, right? Remember they were saying the part of fortune is everything. It's not just it's her status, it's your wealth, it's your status, but it's your whole condition. That Oprah, right? But I mean, think it's with the sun, Oprah. But the actual riches alone, bam. Either way. Okay. Okay, so that was super fucking cool. And oh wait, did we find the 11th for the part of fortune? We did. That was the Saturn. Oh, so now that even makes it different, right? Because now we've got the Saturn with the substance. We've got the substance and the acquisition together in the around the 11th, right? And actually this Saturn is in the 11th, right? Because it's 4 degrees within the cusp, right? Okay, so that's all we have for that. And that was I'm so glad that I didn't send that other video because this was a lot more clear.